Picture a dark interstate in North Carolina. A driver slows down, and only their left brake light illuminates. A police officer spots this, hits the sirens, and pulls the car over to the shoulder. What started as a routine traffic stop escalated. The officer became suspicious, asked to search the car, and ultimately discovered hidden contraband, leading to a felony arrest. There was just one complication. Under North Carolina law at the time, vehicles were only required to have one working stop lamp. The driver hadn't actually broken any traffic laws. In 2014, this case reached the Supreme Court. The justices ruled that the stop was entirely lawful. They found that even though the officer misunderstood the traffic code, his mistake was objectively reasonable. This case established a new standard for policing. It meant a stop could be legally justified, even if the officer's understanding of the law was factually wrong, as long as a judge found that mistake understandable. Look at this flow chart showing a traffic stop. Before 2014, stopping you for a non-existent law meant evidence was thrown out. But post-2014, there's a new path. If a statute is confusingly written, that confusion creates a legal allowance, making the stop valid. There is a specific requirement for this to apply. The underlying law has to be genuinely ambiguous or poorly drafted for a judge to excuse the officer's mistake. This raises an important question for how we are policed. Does handing officers this legal safety net improve street-level justice, or does it incentivize police to take advantage of confusing laws? Grasping how this flowchart works is the difference between knowing your constitutional rights and falling victim to a legally sanctioned intrusion on your privacy. To find out what happens when police know they have a legal safety net, researchers recently published an empirical study in the Missouri Law Review tracking officer behavior. The results are stark. This bar chart compares baseline traffic stops against those made by officers who are familiar with the Supreme Court's leniency. Officers who simply know the ruling exists are almost 5 times more likely to execute a stop based on a law they admit is confusing. As the chart transitions into a loop, you can see how an ambiguous statute is no longer a barrier to making a stop. It feeds directly into officer justification, bypassing the need for an actual crime to occur. Researchers identified this as a familiarity paradox. The Supreme Court intended its ruling to act as a rare safety net for honest mistakes. Instead, it has become an active policing tool. Basic awareness of this judicial leniency directly correlates with drivers facing a higher frequency of highly questionable traffic stops. You might assume that certain types of officers handle this margin of error better than others. The study specifically tracked total years of service and the attainment of higher education, like bachelor's and master's degrees. We generally expect that a more experienced, highly educated cop will execute a more accurate and legally sound traffic stop. The data shows these specific demographics, veterans and degree holders, are most likely to conduct questionable searches. Advanced degrees and years on the force appear to create a confidence that emboldens these officers to aggressively navigate legal gray areas. If we rely on veteran or highly educated officers to be more restrained, the data suggests that trust may be misplaced. Their confidence actually leads to more frequent intrusions into driver privacy. Police departments lean heavily on institutional safeguards, specifically internal legal training workshops and college degree requirements to keep officers in line. If we look at this checklist of what predicts actual legal knowledge, you'll see red X's appearing next to years of service, higher education, and department training. None of these institutional factors predict whether an officer actually understands constitutional limits. Officers are aggressively claiming the authority to make reasonable mistakes on the road, while simultaneously failing basic tests on constitutional law and comprehension. Citizens are being policed by forces that take advantage of a Supreme Court margin of error, without actually understanding the constitutional limits of that margin. This chart plots likelihood to stop on an unclear law against actual legal knowledge. The top left cluster, educated veterans, shows high likelihood to stop, low legal knowledge. The data reveals the incentive structure actively rewards action over legal accuracy. On the road, this translates to a harsh reality. Perfect compliance no longer guarantees you won't see flashing lights in your rearview mirror. The 2014 ruling effectively shifted the burden of legal precision off the state and placed it entirely onto the shoulders of the everyday driver. Activists and reformers often demand more police education and training to fix issues like this. The data shows us that approach does not solve this specific problem. The findings suggest a direct path to closing this loophole. We have to completely remove the ambiguity from the laws themselves. State legislatures must step in and rewrite traffic codes. They must be drafted so clearly that no officer's misunderstanding could ever be deemed reasonable. Until those laws are tightened at the legislative level, the reasonable mistake doctrine will continue to cost innocent citizens their constitutional privacy.